Welcome back, friends. Can you believe we made it to 2021? I'm your host, Dorina Gilmore-Young.
And I'm Shawn Young, and you're listening to Season 2, Episode 1 of Walk, Run, Soar, a podcast about the intersection of faith and running.
And we are so excited to jump into Season 2 with you. We help runners and walkers who lack purpose with their exercise routine or maybe lack of routine and long to experience God in a more meaningful way while they walk or run or maybe jog or slog. We've also got some fun things in store for you for this season, so stay tuned.
Today we are interviewing Dr. Ray Winter, who is the head track and field and cross-country coach at Fresno Pacific University in California. He is married to Kelly, and they have 3 children. Ray has completed numerous distance events, including marathons and the Ironman triathlon. We are chatting with him about a holistic approach to training, navigating COVID times with his team, and how nature provides a place of connection to God.
And we want to send a special shout out to our friends in the Glory Chasers Christian Running Group who are doing the Walk, Run, Soar 21 in 21 challenge this month. So we'll share a little bit more about that later. But friends, we want to say thank you for tuning in. We are here to run with you, to pace you, and to inspire you with weekly devotionals, scripture, interviews, and some quick coaching tips in about the time it'll take you to go for a short run or walk. So pop in your earbuds and listen in. Each week, I start by sharing a short word of encouragement from Scripture to help give you a cool drink of living water before we go into our interview time. And many of these are adapted from our new devotional book, Walk, Run, Soar, which is available in all the places where books are sold. It's available as a paperback, hardback, as an ebook, and even as an audiobook. So if you enjoy the audio format, you might think about getting that audiobook as well. Today, I want to talk about the concept of running away from the lies. And I want to start by telling a little story of something that happened to me. It was a winter morning, and I remember that it was a rainy morning. We could hear the sounds of the raindrops tap dancing on the roof of our house. And I kind of begged Shawn to let us skip our run and stay home in bed because I just didn't want to go out in the cold and the rain. But he knows me well, and he knows I would have regretted it later if I didn't go out there. So without saying a word, he just patiently waited for me by the door until I was ready. And so we started out slowly running in the dark with raindrops kind of splashing in our faces. And I'll be honest, I really wanted to just complain and feel sorry for myself as the goosebumps were forming on my cold skin. But instead, distract ourselves with a new setting that I had found on my Runkeeper app, which is the app that I use to kind of track mileage and track different workouts. And I found out that it actually allows me to change the voice prompts. So instead of listening to the usual runner lady voice, which I was accustomed to, I chose the Boston fan. Shawn and I could not stop giggling at the Boston fan's accent. We kept waiting for what he would say next. And I am going to butcher a Boston accent, but he kept saying these funny phrases like, "Your heart is beating wicked fast, kid, and great job. And how about them apples?" Or "You're ready for the marathon, kid." But in the best Boston accent. Of course, this California girl can't do it. But it was also such a great life lesson for me the longer that we were out there running, listening to the Boston fan. And I thought about this. How different would my life be if I tuned in to the voice of my biggest fan, who is God, instead of that inner runner lady, or maybe it's runner guy, who tells us that we're too old and we're too slow and too heavy and too broken and bruised and too scarred for this race of life? What if instead we listen to the voice of God, who's kind of like that Boston fan cheering us on to the finish line? So often, I admit, I listen to those lies in my head instead of claiming the truth that the Bible tells me. And so as I started thinking about this, I thought every time a lie comes into my mind, I want to replace it with the truth. So here's what I mean. If you hear that voice in your head saying you can never escape your past failures, what if we replace that lie with the truth from 2 Corinthians 5:17 that says, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, and behold, the new has come. Or if you hear that lie in your head that sounds like judgment from other people, remember what it says in Isaiah 54:17. No weapon that is fashioned against you shall succeed, and you shall refute every tongue that rises against you in judgment. So if you hear that voice lying to you again, saying you're not good enough, you're not fast enough, you're not strong enough, answer with this, 2 Corinthians 12:9, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. Each one of us is part of God's glory story. And so, friends, today I want to challenge you with this idea that we need to run away from the lies. Maybe we need to tune out that inner running lady or inner running guy who's telling us lies about our workouts or about how we're not good enough. And we need to take captive every one of those thoughts and replace them with the truth that the Bible gives us. So I want to urge you to chase his glory as you are running or walking today.
Today, we are interviewing Dr. Ray Winter, who happens to be the coach of Fresno Pacific University's track and cross-country teams. He has been there since 2014, and I have actually known Ray since the mid-90s when we both worked at FCA together. That was back when he was running cross-country and track for Fresno Pacific as well, and when he was a collegiate athlete. He got his PhD in literature from UC Merced and also sometimes teaches courses on literature and environmental related topics at Fresno Pacific as well. We are pleased to have Dr. Ray Winter with us.
Welcome, Ray.
I'm so happy to hang out with you guys.
I haven't known you quite as long as Shawn, but definitely have kind of followed some of your career. And I know that at least one of our daughters has been in track and field camp over at Fresno Pacific. She was reminding me of that today, actually, when I said we were going to interview you. And I want to have you just kind of start off and tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, where you live, and just kind of how you fill your days.
I'm married with 3 children, and my wife, Kelly, is amazing. We met in college at Fresno Pacific University, and she was playing volleyball, and she kind of walked onto the track team, and I thought she was pretty cute, so I thought I'd get to know her. And then she turned into just a way better track athlete than I was, and I was giving my life to it. I was like, go figure. So I better marry her and give my kids a chance, And so I've got 3 kids that are 6th, 8th, and 10th grades right now. So that's kind of our busy life with sports and friends and the usual stuff. Fresno, California is where we've been for our marriage. And we live close to San Joaquin River and jumping on the Eaton Trail here in Fresno and running around the foothills. So that's what I like to do for fun, is run and cycle. And I do some triathlon and stuff like that too. And so we're an active family, go backpacking, hiking, and all that good stuff in our backyard in the Sierras. So that's about 99% of me right there. Just go outside and play. And happy to be building a program at my alma mater. It's a privilege to be back at a place where you went and grew collegiately. For me, that was not a time just for like academic growth, but it was absolutely spiritual, personal, transformative time. And so to take over the program that part of has been a real privilege, and with cross country and track, men's and women's, and we're having fun and we're having some success. Biggest thing though is really just seeing people growing holistically. It's kind of cliche, but it does capture that kind of triad of the human experience of mind, body, and spirit, right? And I feel like you can do them all. You don't have to pick one. And I think if you're doing it really well, then they're complementing each other, and that's where we're at right now.
Thanks for sharing that. How did you get started in running and exercising?
My first love was soccer. And I think you ask most distance runners, and probably half of them would say soccer would be in their like biography of running, right? Or their athletic journey, at least in America. It's such an integral part. I love just being out. I was just that kid who just never got tired and running around the basketball court and the soccer field. And, then you get timed in PE and okay, 4 times around. Okay. And you find out that it's not normal. Maybe that tired. So yeah, that's how I started running. And I did like it. And it seems to kind of fit my personality, I suppose, in some ways. I don't know, like suffering, I suppose, somehow is something that is okay to be uncomfortable, right? But there's something pensive about that, and just the things that happen when you're running. I think it just kind of matches my introvert side, and I enjoy it. And it is something though that's communal. And what's so cool about coaching? So yeah, I just grew up in the Central Valley, and ran cross country and track, and had an opportunity to run collegiately and pursue that, and knew I wanted to coach. Even in college, I wanted to be an English teacher and a coach. And FPU really empowered me in those ways. And I went and did that and continued to train with the teams and run with them and try to launch them. And that was a lot of fun to do that at the high school level for 7 years, mostly at Dinuba High School here in the Valley and a year at Carruthers, and then helping out at Fresno Pacific on the side. And all of a sudden an opportunity came up and kind of made a career change. You mentioned in the intro, the PhD thing, you don't really need a PhD in literature to coach track, but happy to do what I'm doing. I think it all ties together. And so, yeah, it's still just who I am, right? And if I'm not running, or if I've missed a couple days, I am a little grouchier, probably. My wife's like, go running.
And it sounds like that was part of your aspirations from when you were a young person too. So let's unpack that a little bit more. What do you love about coaching? Why was that appealing to you?
It's interesting. I think everybody who looks back on their running life can point to a coach that they learned a lot from, and sometimes multiple coaches. And I was really blessed to have great coaches. I know in high school, I had a coach that really taught us about the physiology behind it, why behind what we were doing all of the time. And that was fascinating to me. So it's kind of like that, the physiological laboratory of things that are. And so that was appealing. And then just the camaraderie. I think for me, I really needed family, in high school. I really needed friends. I needed a circle, and that's where I found it. And so on an intellectual level, in terms of kind of like that physiological side of things, it was appealing, but also that was where I felt empowered and supported. And it was just like kind of a nice place. And I knew this is something I'd like to create and to continue to be a part of. I'm a teacher. I know I have those gifts and strengths. And if you can tie two things together effectively, I just know how much running has meant to me. And if I can be a teacher, even thinking about it in terms of like discipleship, right? Empowering people beyond the running, beyond, just beyond your grades this semester, life, right? If you're engaging in this wonderful, catalyst for a greater human experience through running. And so that's been the lens, I think, that I've seen it through, coming out of a Christian university athletic program where that was at the center as well. And that's my perspective.
How is it coaching at your alma mater? I mean, I remember, when we first met, you were a distance runner. You were one of Fresno Pacific's distance runners.
Yeah.
And, I was running at that point, I believe, for Fresno City College. So we were both competing. With all that experience of being a student and then flipping around and becoming the coach, what was that like?
I think maybe the best way to answer that is to say how much right now I value the lineage of those who came before me. As I talk to my team and I say, guys, do you know, what, who built this house, as it were, like these teams in the 70s, right? Far before I was there, right? But just respecting kind of like the pillars on which it's all built when they took like station wagons to nationals in Arkansas with PBJs, and we're over here climbing into nice tour buses and staying in hotels and getting per diem. And it's kind of like perspective, guys, right? That where we are now competitively, certainly having moved into, I think, NCAA Division II, there's that bump up and the expectation goes up. The performance needs to rise to the challenge. To elevate in that way, but also just as a program matures and you see, school records getting broken and just the new normal changing and rising, that's really fun. But to say, hey guys, remember, I want to make sure you know how we got here. It just doesn't happen. It's people who believed in, a vision of a unified effort when there wasn't a track, literally when there wasn't even a track on campus, right? Mm-hmm. When I was there, Shawn, if you remember, we went to Sanger High School. That was our home track, was Sanger High School. And since then, it was like, I think 04, 05 when the track got built. Mm-hmm. And now we hosted NAI nationals a couple times. We host conference every few years.
Wow. Yeah.
So for me, it means a lot. It really is DNA. It really is like a family lineage, and to bring in those alumni and have them hanging out at practices or coming to meets, be it at Woodward Park or be it at the track, that's a big deal. And I think it matters to the athletes. I really think that it really matters to them, and it makes them realize they're part of something bigger.
Just out of curiosity, are you folks able to practice right now during these COVID times? I mean, what are you doing with your athletes, or how are you instructing them?
It's been the hardest now 9 months of my coaching career. I don't think I'm alone. Next week is finals. So at the time of this conversation, it's kind of finals crunch. And so per NCAA rules, they're on their own for a couple of weeks while finals are going on. But we did just come out of a season where we could gather, and we had some protocols that we had to abide by, had some baseline COVID testing. Everybody has to make sure we're safe and follow these daily protocols and so forth. So I was very grateful for that, because we're online as an institution. Nobody's on campus, with a few exceptions for like international students and exceptional cases. Nobody's there. And so we're really fortunate that FPU has made the effort to put the safety of the students first, but also think creatively enough to say it's still possible to gather and go for a run. And we've been able to do that. And it's made the difference. Just today, guys, I had a conversation with two of my athletes they're representative. It's not just track or cross country. I think they're representative of probably athletes in America right now. Two athletes that are really just struggling, whether it's emotional, spiritual, psychological, social, or yes, all of them, right? And it's not just today, of course. It's just been like, man, this is hard. And the thing I tell them is, me too, right? Me too, guys. To put on a brave face is one thing, but I think to be vulnerable in the kind of the brokenness of what's been lost, and also what we're missing out on, that the connection is the most important thing to do. And so that's what we're doing. We're just keep it real and try to connect as much as we can. And so January 11th is day one practice on the other side of things. And we're optimistic that we can do that with, arms stretched out and, fingertips apart. And we're going to, let's go to Woodward and run or something.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing that. This episode will be airing in January. So hopefully this will be the first week of practice for your team. We'll see how it goes. I think we've all learned in 2020 that we have to operate with our hands open and just trusting God for each day and each week. One of the things that we love to talk about on this podcast is the intersection of running and faith. And I know that that's something that's important to you, Ray. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about how you see faith and running as being connected.
That reminds me of your book, actually, because it's exactly what you did in that project. And I love it. And I've actually only used it once, and that's only because we've had non-traditional team gatherings, right? And I can't wait to continue to integrate it, because what you've done there is fold your running and your identity as just a moving person and perambulation and the connection that allows you to make with God into just a really authentic, kind of genuine, down to earth, and yet really reflective, Bible-centered text that's so cool. And it's for me as a friend, with you guys, it's fun to read these, and I can kind of like see your facial expressions even as you're telling some of your stories. Oh, I wasn't there that day, but I can see it happening, and it's really relatable. And so we spend a lot of time as a team every week. We have team meetings, and every year we get into. I pick a book in the Bible, and it's like, that's our book this year. We kind of chip away at it, and we talk about what awaits us in the text, but also to make a connection to, hey, Saturday's the race. Hey, remember Monday when we all fell apart on that workout, and connecting it to our running life, connecting it to our non-run, and just realizing how it's all tied together. So that as a career, it's just ministry, right? I think that's just the best word, or certainly the best perspective to have about that as a coach for me at a Christian university. And I'm still on that journey, right? I have great assistant coaches, for example, that will pull my head out of the clouds and tie it back to my body on the ground. I start thinking primarily about competitive success, and I'm just going for, we're going to win nationals. Right. And that's okay. And I don't think I should apologize for the competitive instincts, but certainly as long as it's not at the cost of that holistic wellness and growth, I stewards with what we've been given, and really honor Christ through that. That is exactly the challenge that I get to live in, and tying the daily victories and hardships to something beyond running. I know I went through that. I was not really like spiritually mature, I would say, as walking in as a freshman in college. And my identity was running. My God was running, straight up. Thankfully, I got injured, and my idol fell. I really went through a time that was pretty powerful, and reorienting what running is. It's a gift, and it's not for my glory, it's for His, and it comes from Him. So to have that fundamental shift and realizing that I'm not exceptional as a typical 18-year-old runner, I'm pretty common. That's a lot of where these talented runners, they're far more talented than I was, certainly also have running located too many steps up the altar, and to walk with them in that, whether it's through their successes, which could be harder, even when they're just really crushing it. It's like, well, that's what we want to do. But as long as you understand, what do we do with that success, and where does that come from? And then, of course, with folks who are struggling, it's an injury or just like a plateau in their training or whatever. That's kind of my daily walk with, about 30 distance runners, and then about 85 total track and field athletes, men and women combined. We do our best, and I certainly lean on an amazing staff that's just servant-hearted people that are incredibly gifted and just masters of their craft.
How many athletes do you have?
I think the exact number this year for distance is 29 men and women, and then pretty evenly distributed there. And then total track and field, everybody is 84 men and women combined this year. So it's a new record. We weren't per se trying to do that, but it's a big family. So
that is a big family, because how large is Fresno Pacific? Like, how many students, undergraduate, do you have?
I was thinking about that, how basically we're about 10% of the university now. I'm very proud. I'm proud of that. We're like that critical mass.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic. I'd love to hear that.
We're in like 800 and 1,000, in the last 5 to 6 years, ebb and flow. So yeah, traditional undergrads.
Yes, of course. Now, you mentioned it a couple of times already in this podcast about the wholeness of a person. How do you see running as beneficial for the whole person, mind, body, and soul?
Yeah. Oh man. I know for me, that's like soul food to go running, right? Just today, I was texting some of my athletes and they're excited to finish up finals and they're going to do a road trip. And we were comparing notes. I'm like, me too, and we're going to hit all these, like, I want to go to Joshua Tree and then into Arizona and Southern Utah. Like, just be a dirt bag in my car with like tights and gloves and just do double days and just go.
Right.
And I know it's like going to Europe and going to cathedrals, right? And you're like, oh, Venice is tomorrow, that's Bryce Canyon, and then the next day we're going to make it down to Rome and that's like Zion. And so for me, that's where I see God, right? In his creation. And it's so spectacular. And he's always there and he's always kind of like waiting for me. And so I'm invitational. I like to bring people to church with me, I guess. And so to make that connection, I think is important. And I think there's something about movement and even just in our bodies chemically, what happens when we move. I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think so many folks right now, just even on my team, just the students, everybody, athletes included, but we're kind of cooped up and we're stuck in front of screens too much. And we see the effects of that when it's a chronic pattern. It's one thing to just deal with finals and have an acute window of time where you got to grind. But right now it's kind of chronic. And I think we do see these patterns that are sad and horrifying, really, for so many people that are struggling. But what happens even just biochemically to the brain and how we synthesize data when, for me, again, the epiphanies, right? Mm-hmm. It's like when I'm running and I'm in the shower, right? It's like there's something happening there where everything congeals. And I get back from so many runs. And nowadays, it's not my journal anymore. It's my notes app, on my phone. And I just have to get it down. I finally figured it out, or I have this idea. So I think something is going on there beyond what I can describe on that level. But I know it, at least anecdotally for me, that's where it's kind of an unplug and a total plug in at the same time. And it's a rebalancing, a recentering. So like I tell my athletes, and I know sometimes they feel like it's a job to go running. When, you lose the fire, especially this semester, right? When everybody's apart, it's a tough deal. And I say, I really hope running can just be a life giver for you every day when you get out the door. Let it be that, right? Like try to let it be that. Try to shift your perspective and say, this is where I'm going to regenerate. It's not hard labor. It's not torture. It's a gift. I'm going to go enjoy myself. So I think that's part of an answer anyways. Certainly is for me and what I try to pass on to the athletes, to remember the joy, to be invigorated by it, and then go to the cathedrals, right? As it were. We just happen to have some spectacular cathedrals in our backyard with Kings Canyon and Yosemite and, the Sequoia and on and on and on. It just keeps going. We're so fortunate. And you go over to the coast, I have to share this if I could really quick. One of the biggest losses I think the team feels, we didn't get to do camp, man. We didn't get to go up to the Sierra. And there's something about that. Yeah, the trails, but the time together, it's the going to the wilderness, right? It's Jesus in the wilderness for 40 days to center himself. It's the same thing going on, I think, in a one-to-one God relationship, and then also a one-to-one, neighbor relationship. And we have a blast. It's everybody's favorite week of the year. And we've all kind of mourned the loss of camp, right? So we're looking forward to gathering, and maybe we'll do some Saturday trips up the hill and try to run some different trails instead of, the same 4 all the time.
I love the way that you articulated that. I know it's kind of a big topic, but I can certainly resonate, especially as a writer, to what you were describing. I was thinking about that, in fact, just this morning, because I've been kind of struggling through an essay that I'm writing, and I went out for my run and I realized there's just this thing that happens in my brain where the sentences kind of come together as I find that cadence of my, feet hitting the trail and seeing, at least at this time of year, the beautiful colored leaves and the sun shining through the trees.
Yeah.
There's just something that happens. And I think you hit on it really well too, that it's just a neat thing to see and how God always shows up in that space as well. So I want to ask you, I know you have this really incredible teaching opportunity through Fresno Pacific in the summertime. I don't know if it's going on right now, but could you tell our listeners a little bit about what you teach in terms of the wilderness literature?
It's like the perfect experience. And I say experience, right? Because Fresno Pacific has a very young program. It's a wilderness program where we have interdisciplinary humanities and some natural sciences classes also offered in the Sierras for a summer session. And it's not all summer, unfortunately. That'd be cool. But for a 3-week condensed period of time, there's some class before that and a week or so after that. So it's really a 6-week window. But for 3 weeks, we're in the Sierras and we are hiking and backpacking. I think really that's the summative event is the usually about 7-day backpacking trip. And for some people, they've done it a lot of times, but for most, where's the shower, right? You're going to get an education like no other. It's going to be, and it's great. But to be sitting, at a high Sierran lake and reading Muir or Thoreau or Emerson and talking about like transcendentalists, talking about Muir, who is like this, probably globally, the most important preservationist ethicist or apologist ever. And to sit at the same lake or on the same edge of the same river where he had some of these reflections and shared them, that's really powerful for me and enjoyable to truly experience a text in that way and then to reflect together and then try to synthesize what you're feeling, sensory wise with what you're reading and connecting to somebody who was, and then connecting with the people who you're sharing it with. Really fun. Like, let's do this all the time, guys. And so we get into, for me, I get into mostly the most important American voices of wilderness literature. Some of it's fiction, but mostly nonfiction and some great writing, different genres, poetry, essays, prose. And then we gather for a meal, and maybe Dr. Michael Coons, who is a many times Boston Marathon finisher, a local runner, and one of my great friends, he's over here teaching like, plant science or insectology or something, and we're comparing notes, and it's amazing what we have to share with each other that's totally tied together. So that's a great pleasure for me and privilege to get to do that. And I think at this point, I've had 4 of my athletes up there in the 3 summers. It's been 3 summers. I've had 4 athletes. And so a number of times we'll finish a day of hiking. Most people are dropping their sacks like somewhere between tears and glory. They're just, we made it to, and then I'm like, all right, let's go to that hill, come on, Stevie, come on. And then we take off and we are the weirdos. Yes. And like, what is wrong with these people? It's like the hike was a means to the run, right? So It's pretty cool.
That's incredible. Okay, sign me up for that course. Wow. He just described my dream learning experience.
Yeah, can non-students apply?
Come on down.
Maybe I should take it.
We were just up at Yosemite National Park for our Thanksgiving break with our family. And just basking in the glory, so to speak, of, seeing all those places. And even at one point, I think there's a John Muir quote or something that's on one of the things, but I said, "Hey, Shawn, have you ever read any John Muir?" And he's like, "We need to talk to Ray Winter."
I have a reading list. I'll send it your way.
I remember those being some of my favorite readings back when I was in college. So I love that you've turned that into a course and even made it a means for inviting students into hiking and walking and running at the end, maybe with a few brave souls.
So, Ray, are
Yeah.
there any stories or verses from the Bible related to running that really inspire you?
Yes, we have kind of a team verse, and it's interesting too. It's interesting that you asked that question, and I think I've heard you ask others that question, and it's a great wraparound question. I have two-part answer. One is I encourage all of my athletes to have a mantra or have a number of mantras or sayings that they can go to when they are going to need them. And you always need them if you're an endurance athlete. You will always need them every time you're in an effort, even in practices, certainly. But when it gets hard, as you anticipate that moment where you have to make some decisions, am I going to lean into this or am I going to excuse myself from this? What do you need to hear? What do you need to remember to push into it and to proceed, to endure and to persevere? So I encourage them with that challenge, and we walk through a number of verses, and I share some of my mantras, and sometimes they are verses, not always, but I encourage everybody to find that. And this year, it so happens that we are reading through Romans, and Romans 5, just at the beginning of Romans 5, it talks a bit about suffering and what suffering brings, right? It's going to promote character, and it's going to draw you into a place of hope. So that, for me, Romans 5, 1-5 is kind of at the heart of our program. And it's amazing this year that has served us in terms of everything non-running, right?
Yeah.
In the midst of suffering. This year, it's emotional, social, psychological, spiritual, far beyond the suffering of Heartbreak Hill or mile 20 of a marathon or 1 mile to go on a 6K for the ladies or an 8K for the guys or whatever. It's just very tangible right now in their lives. And yes, we're suffering in a lot of ways. And so perseverance, character, hope, like that thread is really worth holding on to. That's a promise that is made to you that A equals B equals C. Believe it, that's something. So we've really leaned on that more than ever this year. And I have too, in my vulnerabilities, in my brokenness, in my weaknesses, in my own struggles with depression and focus and motivation. This is how it works. And to hold on to those mantras, to have them locked and loaded, and to really believe them and pray through them when you need them the most. And I guess maybe for me as a coach, that would be a running tip, I suppose, to have your mantras. And sometimes it's a word that triggers all of this stuff that has power. And sometimes it's a verse.
Oh, I love that. It definitely echoes what we talk about in our book as well. And, just the idea that a mantra is not just something we say, but it's something that's meaningful. You talked about with Romans that it's developing character. And when it is scripture, something that we can hold on to as living and active in us. So I love that example that you gave. Even as we were coming up with the title of our book, Walk, Run, Soar, I was thinking about that a lot as I was running. Like, this is a great mantra because of that movement towards soaring and the connection to Isaiah 40 as well. Well, our time has gone so quickly here. Just chat with you for another hour here, just about coaching tips and stories of running in the wilderness. I think definitely resonates so much with Shawn and my passions. Yeah. We really appreciate just your willingness to be on our podcast and also to endorse our book. I know you were one of the people who got an early copy of the book, and that meant so much to us to just hear some of your feedback as well. So thanks for being with us, Ray.
I'm so grateful and humbled that you asked. And thank you guys for your ministry and for the work that you do and all the coaching you do. I'll run into you at the Compass. All the locals know what we're
for sure. Yes, as we're standing 6 feet apart. Thank you for being with us.
Thanks, guys.
This week's coaching tip is about Diet. Eat a well-balanced diet of carbohydrates, protein, and fat for optimal performance. Although complex carbohydrates are a huge favorite of distance runners, don't forget about the protein because they help build muscle. Stay clear of unsustainable fad diets and quick weight loss methods because those just aren't going to last for a long time. Just really try to eat a well-balanced diet and create a healthy habit.
Before we close, I just wanted to share a few more details with you about our new book, Walk, Run, Soar. It's a 52-week devotional and training journal designed for runners and walkers who long to experience God's presence in a deeper way. And it's the beginning of a new year. So it's a perfect time to jump into going through this devotional to walk you through your journey of the year. We like to talk a lot about putting on good habits instead of making resolutions that are going to be easily broken. And following along with our Walk, Run, Soar devotional and training journal is a great way to form a new habit for 2021. Walk, Run, Soar gets you moving with that new motivation of knowing Jesus more every step of the way. And the book includes training plans, reflection questions, and space for journaling.
And don't forget to join our free Glory Chasers Christian Running Group Facebook community. We offer up coaching, courage, and community in that space. We love connecting with runners and walkers across the globe. We share tips, workout ideas, gear recommendations, and also pray for each other in that group. Right now, we are hosting a Walk, Run, Soar 21 in 21 challenge in that group. It is a 21-day challenge where we encourage people to set weekly goals and move every day. So sign up for the Walk, Run, Soar 21 in 21 challenge. Find out more details in the Glory Chasers Christian Running Group Facebook group.
Friends, I just want to say thanks for joining us today. This was episode 1 of season 2 of the Walk, Run, Soar podcast. And we are here to talk about that intersection of running and faith. Make sure you hit subscribe on the podcast so you can get the next episode as soon as it drops. We are here every Wednesday. And if you could do us a huge favor and rate the podcast, even just sharing a sentence or two is so helpful because when podcasts are rated, they're actually recommended to other listeners. And we would love for more people to hear the message of Walk, Run, Soar. We will see you next week.